was scared that not many people in the MBA school will show up for this talk, so I brought my own cheerleading squad. So if you're from 321, can you make some noise? We have some of our team members here. Good evening, my name is Gaurav. As you can see, I'm very, very excited to be here to speak to all of you. I was given 3 instructions, things to talk about. First was try and make a case of why people should care. So I'm going to try and make that case. Second is, they said, share a little bit about your journey and what you've done. I'll try and do that. And third is how you can contribute and how you can be a part of the sector. Why should we care about education, right? Like, it seems like something which is important. Everyone has an opinion on it, but really, once you get into nitty-gritties, why should we care, right? Let me try and make a small case here for you. Our children are not learning. Over the last 10, 20 years, we've, as a country, done an incredible job to build schools for our children and get most of them within those schools, right? About 97% of our children start school, which is a great thing when you realize that India has as many children as all the children of US, UK, Japan, South Africa, Russia, and China put together. So it's great, and we should be proud of that. The sad thing is the children are not learning, right? So a very simple stat that some of you might have known is that more than half of the children in 5th grade cannot read a 2nd grade text. Very fundamental metric of education. Can you learn to read, right? Till grade 2, you learn to read, and then from grade 3, you read to learn. If children don't make that shift, they're never able to catch on, and they just keep falling more and more behind. More than half of our children cannot do this. And this stat has basically remained the same for the last 10 odd years when we've been measuring it, right? Simple subtraction problem. Much more than half of our children cannot do this. What does this mean as a country at an overall level, right? We talk about competing with other countries. We talk about the demographic dividend. There's something called the PISA test, right? The OECD does it. Only 1 year India took part in it, right? A few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. The whole nation didn't go, actually. We sent our 2 best states, Tamil Nadu and Himachal Pradesh. Out of 74 countries, we came 72nd and 73rd. Most people in our country don't even know about it, right? And we then decided that this is too much, we won't even take part in this test, right? Here is where it hurts. We talk about competing with China. If you look at the graph and you go inside it, an average 8th grader in India was at the level of an average 3rd grader from Shanghai. How on earth are we going to compete in this world if that's what our education system is doing, right? And this continues, right? So it starts here and it shows up, right? Our youth are not happy. Why? Very simple. They don't get the jobs they need, and if they get the jobs, they can't do them well. Most of us have seen a version of this news clipping over the last 5 years, right? 95%, 70%, 80% of the engineers, doctors, whichever profession you pick, have not really been qualified or have not studied. They might have gone through the degree, but have not picked up the skills. Or the other side of it, right? You have overqualified people applying for very few jobs. Again, a very common one. A position opened for a peon in one of the government departments, more than 1 lakh people applied. Thousands of them who were PhDs and graduates. What does this tell us? If you speak with any of these individuals, right, what you will see is their aspirations and dreams are very much the same as ours. They want the same life, they hope for the same things. This is where the aspirations are. This is somewhere where the skills or the opportunities or jobs are. What happens to a country when there's this much of a gap between where its young people want to be and where they are? And what happens when that young population runs into hundreds of millions? When they get angry and frustrated, who do you think they're going to blame? Who are the winners who have what they feel they should have had and the system didn't give it to them? when you see that youth are getting more extremist, when we see that they are getting more violent, where do you think that violence is going to be directed at? Our potential for every single one of us is intertwined with the potential of our nation. Individuals don't thrive in countries which are not thriving. And so when we squander the potential of our nation, we're actually squandering our potential. It is our potential that is getting wasted. That's why we should care. That every single one of us, no matter what we make of our lives, we will ultimately be as far as our country will be. So when that child in a remote school does not learn, in some way or the other, direct or indirect, it's going to come and impact all of us. That's why I care, and I think that's why we should all care about this. Now, what I'll do is I'll share a little bit of my journey over the years of having understood this, trying to do something about this, right? About 10 years ago, I was actually working here in Hyderabad, and I decided to sort of quit my job and join Teach for India, right? It was the first year it was starting. I think some of the people here know about it. I didn't know any of this stuff really, right? Definitely not in as much detail. And I actually joined for the For India part. I really didn't even see the Teach part. I joined because I was, like many of you, just sick and tired of seeing problems and talking about it. I am 100% sure there are people here who know there are problems, who've been talking about this, and I was sick and tired of ranting on social media, of discussing with your friends. Right? That's where I was. And I was like, if my house is dirty, how long can I expect someone else to come and clean it? I have to do something about it. And so I decided to quit my job and join Teach for India. What I'll do is I'll share sort of the lessons over the last 10 years. And it basically starts here. June 2009, I've started teaching. My first sort of month, I was told I would have about 25 children. I had about 50. I was expecting a decent classroom. This is what the blackboard looked like. And through some administrative issue, I had a 6-year-old and a 14-year-old in my second grade classroom. And seeing all these inequalities, seeing all these difficulties in class, and what the children were going through, I felt really sad for myself. I had come to change India, and people were making it really hard. Right? If you don't give me a blackboard, how will I write? If you give me so many children with so much difficulty, how will I do it? Right? In my head, I was like, Tare zami pe banayenge. Right? And here I can't even get the children to sit down. And for a month or so, I felt really sad about myself. I had a lot of self-pity. Right? And that's how we are. Right? We want to do something good, but we want to do it for our reasons. Till something clicked in my head, which is this phrase which sort of has almost now defined the arc of my life, right? It was a very simple phrase, and it was, what will I do about it? Right? There are problems in front of all of us. We're all aware of them. We can see them. After a point, the only question we can ask ourselves is, what will I do about it? Am I going to get up and take some action? So after cribbing for a month and feeling so sad about how life is so difficult and I came to change this country and it's not happening, I stopped cribbing. And I said, no matter what, this is the reality and this is what we figured out. Right? So we didn't have blackboards, so we wrote on the walls. That's where Mohan learned to read, count numbers, by the way. So in that statistic of 52%, he's not there. Right? In my second year, I actually took this statement and taught the children this. Right? If you spend time with children or youth who grow up in poverty, one of the biggest things they feel that's taken away from them is their sense of agency. They feel powerless. They feel they can't do something about anything. They're just victims. And when you help children see that they can do something about it, they go and do incredible things, right? So in my second year, I did a whole theme around getting children to think about this question, right? And it was mind-blowing what they came up with, right? Shazia, Ikra, who are all in this picture, right? And they did things about things that mattered to them, right? So some of them felt that they were sad and angry that the school was always dirty. And they said, what will I do about it? And went and did something about it, right? Some of the girls were unhappy with the fact that they were always bullied by the boys. And they said, we will do something about it, and went and had a conversation and moved them to try and understand that they are also human beings, right? But the point was, this question took on something much bigger, right? Which was this call to action and to remember that we all of us have the power to do something about that thing that is annoying us, right? It might be small, it might be big, but that is the core that we have to remember, and that's something that has massively influenced how I have thought through. Because when you look at the size and scope of these problems, you feel very powerless, right? You feel very small, right? And what I try and do is just focus on this, right? It's so critical that 3 to 1, which is the name of our organization, the 1 is actually that. So every number sort of represents a concept, and 1 for us is that one important question we always ask ourselves, which is what will I do about it? So that's the first sort of lesson I wanted to share, right? Like this statement has really helped me think through the role I want to play in the world, what I want to stand for, and I want to offer this as a question to think about. So I've done my fellowship. It's sort of, I'm now trying to figure out what do I want to do post this, right? This is early days in Teach for India also, no one really knows what to do. And I decided that I've gotten a lot from the sector and I want to continue staying in education. I want to help more teachers, more schools get better. But I started with a dream of I want to start a school. So Jan 2011, 26 years of age, really don't have much clue about this, but I'm like, I'm going to start a school, and then from there we'll figure out how to support more schools. Make a list of 10 names, and I'm like, these are people I've met over the last few years. They've said, we'll support you. One of them will say yes. Go to the first person, give them my pitch, get my first no. That one really doesn't really register, because it's like a blur, right? I'm like, I don't know what happened. Okay, maybe I'll go to the next one, right? Next one definitely registers. I still remember walking out of that room, because now that self-doubt is starting to creep in. You're like, maybe my idea is not that good, right? Third one happens, fourth one happens. Now it's like, I think I am an idiot, right? There is something wrong with me, right? By the time I've gone to the 6th, 8th, 7th one, it's very hard to be able to take in this much, right? And so, since most of the people I had to reach out have said no, I make a list, send an email, and then just start reaching out to anyone and everyone who will listen. And over the next few months, in various forms, meetings, emails, I must have gone through about close to 300 people before I got the first yes. And it was one of the most embarrassing conversations I had in my life, because I could not believe the person was saying yes, right? And I had gotten so many no's that I didn't want to sort of fake understand that I got a yes. So I had a 5-minute embarrassing conversation with this person called Ashish Dhawan, who's actually a board chair, and who set up one of India's biggest private equity firms and now runs an education firm in India. And I was like, Ashish, I just want to check. First of all, this amount is in dollars, it's not rupees. You're sure of that, right? Like, yes, Gaurav. And I can see him say, like, I understand. I'm like, Ashish, this is a grant. I can't pay you back. He's like, yes, I understand. I'm like, this is not a loan. I can't pay you back. He's like, I get that. But the point was, it was so unreal to hear a yes after hearing so many no's, right? And what kept me going was a concept that someone explained to me. That like when you're trying to do something which is difficult and hard, there are a certain number of no's which are written in your life. Now the point is, nobody knows how many of those no's are written. So your job is to not worry about the no's. Your job is to go and collect your share of no's. And once you've collected that, you will find your yes. It might be 1, it might be 300, you don't know, just go collect your share of no's. And this is something that's really helped as we've gone on to do more and more difficult things, is to learn how to face rejection, right? And not to personalize it, but just to keep it as there are certain set of no's written in my life. All I need to do is collect them all, right? So you make it a Pokemon game, learn from every no, but collect as many, and then you will sort of find your yes eventually, right? And that's something that's really helped as sort of we've grown and improved in our work. So we got the funds, we set up the school, and it started with 60 children. We went around in the slum where we had the school building and spoke with parents, asked them and told them what we wanted to do with their children. So through a lot of work, got the school started with 60 children. By the end of the year, the word of mouth had spread. Parents heard that there was a different kind of school where children were learning. So we reached about 100 plus kids, and quickly grew to about 400 children in about 3-4 years, right? So the school was doing really well. We developed a reputation. We started training other teachers and schools. And then in around August 2016, we ran into sort of one major challenge, right? Where a big part of the model was that we would work with the government to get the space, right? So we would be bringing our teachers, and the relationship with the government was going really, really difficult, right? We were not able to manage the relationship. Many of you who worked with the bureaucracy know how hard it is. And what ended up happening was that we were, not getting the space we needed. We were not getting the support we needed, right? So that's our children. We had about 100 children sitting in corridors learning. And this was sort of the second year in a row. And which became very difficult, right? So people would come in and they'd see the incredible learning the children were doing, and they're like, wow, you can get kids to learn in such difficult environments. But it was really getting hard to be able to run this, right? And so we started exploring other options of what to do here. And an option that emerged was there was another not-for-profit which is running schools in similar areas, and they had a lot of government relationships. They had a big team. They knew how to manage the government relationship. And so the option that emerged was, what if our organization merged with theirs, which is basically our school became part of them. But what that meant was that we would have to give up the school. We would have to literally give up our baby, everything that we had built over these years, right? It was one of the most painful periods of 8 months of my life. And the big thing I learned from that is that there will be times when there will be very hard decisions to make, right? There will be too many variables, too many things. And if you have to optimize for something, first optimize for the why. And so what we did was we went back to why did we start this organization, why did we start the school, right? And what it was clear was we wanted the children to have a better future. Now, if that meant that after 4 years when we had set the foundation, if somebody else had to come and take it over, if that's what's right for the children, then that's what we should do. So we gave the school, so most of our staff stayed back. So for the children, nothing really changed. So the children continued in the school. We supported the school financially and sort of academically for a year. And meanwhile, spun a small team out to continue our work in helping other teachers and other schools get better, right? About 3 years in from there, the school is doing well, the kids are doing well, they manage the government relationship much better, and we've managed to focus on what we really care about, which is improving the quality, and our work has grown a lot more, right? So we're now a team of full-time 80 staff. We're working with about 150 schools over the last few years, impacted close to 3,000 teachers and more than 1 lakh children. And so we've managed to focus on what is important to us by really remembering on what is the why. Why did we start this, and how do we keep optimizing for that, right? And so that's really the 3 lessons that I wanted to share with you, right? When you have to look at a problem and you feel that you care about it but feel powerless, remember this question. If you're going to do something big, you're going to face rejection. Just collect your share of no's, right? You will find the yes. And the last thing is that when you have to make big decisions, start by optimizing for the why, right? 3 things that have really helped me and helped us as we've grown our work, right? I'll sort of end this with talking about how can you contribute, right? I've had a lot of people come and say, we're interested in the sector, we don't know how we can contribute. I'll share a little bit about that, right? I have 4 exciting options and ways for you to contribute, right? Exciting option number 1, the more traditional way, the way that many people know about. Give some of your time. You're all smart, passionate, hardworking people. You can contribute your time in some way. You can volunteer, you can consult, you can freelance. There are many opportunities available. You can start exploring them, much more and many more opportunities than you might be aware of. And there are lots of people here. I think there's a club which focuses on that can help you think through that. If that's not exciting enough for you, look at option 2, which is give some of your money. Right? You can take some of your money and sort of contribute that and help the sector grow. Now, I know what you're saying. What are you thinking, right? You're saying, Gaurav, you've inspired us. These 2 options are not exciting enough for us, right? So I have the most 2 exciting options at the end. If giving some of your money is not enough, give all of your money. Now, I know what you're thinking, right? You're saying, yaar, if I give you all of your money, what you're going to get is a lot of student debt, right? More and more people who are generating wealth are starting to donate almost all of it to philanthropy, right? Everything from the Warren Buffett pledge, where they have based, and Bill Gates pledge, where they've donated all their money to many now philanthropists in India, right? We have a very low percentage of grant giving and donation in our country, right? I refuse to believe that this fewer people in our country care, right? So if you want to contribute, you can contribute with your money. You can give it to an organization, whatever appeals to you. You can contribute it now, you don't have to wait, and if you feel that there's a lot of wealth in your future, you can write it off right now itself. That I will eventually give away all my wealth in my lifetime. But here's the option number 4, which is closest to my heart and which is the one that I want to speak to you all about. The sector has changed dramatically, right? It's not the social sector that many of you might know from movies 30 years ago. It's incredibly professional in nature. It's very organized. There is a lot of young people coming. And here is where, and a lot of things have improved. For example, the salaries have improved dramatically over the last 10, 15 years. For the simple reason that donors are understanding that if you want to solve some of these very difficult problems, you need people who might not necessarily get rich, but who can have a decent living. But along with that, what the sector gives you is 2 things where I feel you might not get in the regular corporate job. It gives you a sense of purpose. You wake up in the morning feeling that what you do every day matters. And those of you who work for a few years know what I'm talking about. You know that empty feeling of waking up every morning, going there because you have to go, but not knowing, does it even matter? Should I even be doing this, right? That's one thing that you can get very powerfully in the sector. And the second is the chance to see an impact, to see that everything that you do leads to a change in front of you. That is one of the most powerful feelings you can have, and it really sort of fuels a lot of the work we do, that we can say and see that the change happens because of what we do. It matters. It's not another meaningless statistic floating in a big sort of whirlpool. And that's sort of some of the ways. I'm going to be here after this talk. There are many people here interested. If you are thinking of looking at the sector, I would say think and look a little bit deeper. You will find a lot more interesting stuff than you might know about. Okay? I want to end the session by just putting up a very simple quote. I started the presentation by talking about 2nd grade and 5th grade children, and I'm going to recreate an activity that we often do with 2nd and 5th grade children. We're going to do what's called choral reading, which means we will all read together. Now, I know you're starting to squirm. They're like, no, this is passive participation. I don't want to actively participate. There's a lot of power when human beings read something together, right? So when I say 1, we'll all start reading together from the first line. And I want you just, together as a room, read this, okay? So 3, 2, 1. This world that we see around us was built by people like you and me. We are not passive recipients in this world. We are not victims. We are not agency-less individuals. There are problems you see around you. You know it strikes you in your heart. Just know that you have the power to do something about it. And when you see that problem and you feel that surge of emotion, ask yourself, what will I do about it? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. I'm sure you inspired us to contribute in any way we can. In the interest of time, we're going to take one question. For the rest of you who have sent in your questions, you'll get a chance to meet Gaurav offline. You can connect with the ILS team. The first question is by Vidhi.
Charity is often viewed as a handout.
Sure.
And like you said, a lot of children which you taught felt they were victimized. They felt they couldn't actually be agents of change. which is a feeling echoed amongst a lot of the stakeholders who are at the receiving end of this channel. So how do you think you can bring dignity and empowerment into charity?
Sure. I think that's a great question. I think that question is at the root of why the sector is seen the way it is, right? It's often seen as, let me do something for you. You are the poor, downtrodden, let me do something for you. I think one of the things that many organizations like ours do differently, and we're not the exception, we're becoming more of the norm in young ways, that people are realizing that these problems are first of all not just their problems, it's everyone's problem, and that none of these problems are going to be solved by someone coming and giving a handout. They've been there for generations and they will continue to be there for generations. And the way we will solve them is if we see everyone as a co-contributor and a co-creator in the solution, right? And so we need to bring in the same, so one of the first things we take our team through is design thinking. Right? We immerse them in understanding the problems that somebody else is facing. How do you build meaningful solutions to that, and how do you bring them in as participants, right? And when you start looking at that, it's like any other profession where you're trying to solve problems for users that are meaningful to them, and you're trying to bring them in as part of the process, right? We heard in a session before this where brands are saying the authenticity that you have and how much of a connect you have with your user is what will resonate. It's the exact same thing, right? If you are going to stand here and say, I'm going to give something to you, nobody's going to take it, right? But if you're on the same page where I help you and you help me, that's how you sort of build the country, and that's how you build the movement.